Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
We've got some legitimate news to discuss here on the Redbird Report this week. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Thanks for being along for the ride today. Dustin May, the newest St. Louis Cardinal, signed a one-year deal, T-Bone, worth $12.5 million. Now, it's a $12 million salary for 2026. There's a $500,000 buyout on his mutual option. For those that aren't familiar with the way that it works, basically both sides have to say, yeah, we love this agreement. It works for both of us. The Cardinals say they want him back for $20 million, which is basically a qualifying offer. He says, I want to sign for $20 million, and they're able to do that. If either side says, let's not continue this partnership, that contract is broken for the second year. He gets a $500,000 buyout. So that's why you've probably seen it's a 1 year, $12.5 million guaranteed deal, because he, at a minimum, will be guaranteed that amount of money. I love the signing, T-Bone. It's maybe a little bit more than some expected it to be in terms of the overall salary for Dustin May, but this is the going rate. If you want somebody that has the kind of stuff that he has, you're paying $12 to $20 million on an annual basis. It's a very low risk, decently high reward type of a signing for the Cardinals. He was not very productive last year, but at least he was healthy, which has not always been the case. In fact, almost has never been the case for Dustin May in his career. When you saw officially the money that was attached to Dustin May's name, what was your reaction to the signing, T-Bone?
Yeah, I like the signing. Like he's a guy that we've pinpointed, it feels like all offseason long, but I really like the signing because of what you said. He's got stuff to where it can generate some swing and miss with the way he pitches. It's better and more intriguing than the Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn signings from 2 years ago. And you look at him, I understand, like, yes, he hasn't been healthy. Yes, he hasn't been able to eat up innings. But you hope that it all clicks together to where you could end up where he puts it all together and ends up with like a 3.8 ERA. And that's a guy that teams are going to covet at the trade deadline. We had talked about this both on the show and I think maybe on this podcast as well. This was essentially buying you a prospect once we get to the trade deadline. If everything goes according to plan, they'll be able to tinker with his stuff. His four-seamer is a pitch that I really like. He's got opponents hit 165 against it. I think you ditch the sinker. Sweeper is the pitch that I see every time I've watched him pitch where I go, that thing's disgusting. And then I look up and he gives up a bunch of runs. But it's an upside play. I like the signing that the Cardinals did, and I brought this up earlier today. When you look at some of the names that his stuff kind of compares to in terms of velocity and movement, it's names you'd want to be associated with. It's Zach Wheeler, Sandy Alcantara, Tanner Houck, who was an all-star 2 years ago. That's why you make this kind of signing. That's why it costs more than I was expecting. I was thinking like 7 to 10. He got 12 mil. Totally fine with that. You bring him in, he's like the quote-unquote number one for your rotation.
Number one, number two, number three, somewhere in that mix. He's somebody that is at least guaranteed a spot. And we talked all, I guess, starting in maybe September-ish, once we kind of had an idea of what the offseason was going to look like up until now. So the last 3 to 4 months on what the plan would be for them when it came to signings, trades, whatever it might be. And a lot of the time we would use Dustin May as the placeholder. Hey, I don't know who they're going to sign, but a Dustin May type. And so instead of going and getting some facsimile of him, just get the actual product. Get Dustin May. And some may look at his recent history and say, okay, so this is an oft-injured starter who the last time that we saw him when he finally was healthy had a near 5 ERA. Why are you trying to sell me on this guy being better than what we had previously? I mean, if you just look at the overall numbers, it's not all that dissimilar from an Andre Palante, for example.
Yep.
And nobody wants to see Andre Palante pitch next year, I would say. So the reason why it's different, the reason why I would sell you on this being a really good signing for the Cardinals is because there are explanations, not excuses, in my opinion, explanations on how that happened. One, it was his first year back pitching in full capacity, basically since the 2020 COVID season. Two, the 2024 season, the reason that he missed it is because he had a horrible accident that took place. So we talked about this previously on the show. He was eating salad. A piece of lettuce, according to the story, got lodged in his throat. It tore his esophagus. He had to have emergency surgery and missed the entirety of the season because of that. It was so bad that he felt as though it was a potential life and death situation. He wasn't sure he was ever going to throw a baseball again. He wasn't sure he was going to make it through the situation. So just for him to get back onto the mound and throw 130 innings last year at the big leagues, that was considered to be a success. But the reason why I think there might still be more in him is because he lost 40 pounds after that incident. And last year, according to him at his press conference that we heard earlier today, he was pitching last year at roughly 190 pounds. Now, to put this in perspective, I'm not an overly big guy. I'm 6'1". I weigh around 180 pounds. He's 6'6", and last year pitched at 190 pounds. So it stands to reason he wasn't exactly at full strength, at full capacity as he was throwing last year. Honestly, the fact that he was able to have a sub-5 ERA is nothing short of remarkable. So he is now back up, according to him, to around 220 pounds. He's gained some of that muscle back. He thinks he can pitch around that weight next season. And if he does get back to the same strength levels that he was previously, in 2022-ish, 2023, his sinker was averaging 97 miles an hour. I know you said, T-Bone, you ditched the sinker. If you're throwing at 97, you can keep it. That's fine. That's an effective pitch. It's when the sinker is down to 94, as it was a year ago, down 3 miles per hour on the velo. That's when it becomes an issue, and it now is suddenly a weakness in your arsenal. So it's a worthwhile risk, a worthwhile gamble for the Cardinals, because in the event that he's able to get back to something approaching full health, there is still some legitimate upside here. But even then, I don't think he has the same number one stuff as he did previously. I would say you're hoping that he regains form and is like a number 3 starter for you.
Yeah.
For a good team, he could be a mid-rotation starter. And in the event that he is, you have 2 options there. One, he becomes a mainstay in your rotation, and you sign him not just for the $20 million deal next year, but potentially to a multi-year extension because he's only 28 years old. Or 2, another team views him as a mid-rotation starter. You trade him at next year's deadline, and you end up with a prospect for, I don't know, $8 million, basically. You bought a prospect in the offseason. Smart move by him to find a place that he can start 30 games if he's healthy next year. And smart move by the Cardinals to have basically a no-risk signing.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, I know you brought up it's a mutual option and how it works. I'll just tell you now, I've never seen a mutual option that's taken, right? Because somebody doesn't want, either the Cardinals wouldn't want a reunion or he doesn't want to be back because he pitches so well. This is a 1-year deal. And as we've said before, there's no such thing as a bad 1-year contract.
Can I explain why I think this is included here real quick?
Sure.
My theory on it, at least. If you're his agent, I absolutely want a mutual option attached to this. So you can't qualifying offer my player.
Yeah.
Because in that event, like, if he had a great season this year, there was no mutual option attached to it, the Cardinals would just say, yeah, we'll QO him. Now his market is busted next offseason. He can't go out and get that big contract because he's probably still, like I said, a middle of the rotation starter. And so it would make more sense for him to just come back on that $21-ish million contract for the Cardinals. Whereas in this scenario, if he were to decline that option, now he can go to the market without the qualifying offer attached. So that's why, in my opinion, he probably attaches this thing.
Well, I think they can still attach him with it, right? So that's why, like, if you pitch well, if you're him, you almost probably need to take the $21 million or $20 million option, because otherwise you just cost yourself $2 million on the market, and the QO can be attached to you.
Can they do that even after the qualifying offer is declined?
Because wasn't that Imanaga?
Yeah, that's true.
Because Imanaga was I don't know, he was like a team that it got declined and became a mutual, and he said no, and then Cubs attached him on the QO. So I think they can still attach him with it. I just think they put these in here as if the Cardinals still believe in some upside in Dustin May. Like, I don't know why you ever would put a mutual option in one. I've never, again, because I brought it up, I've never really seen one of these really pan out to where both sides are like, yeah, you know, let's hug it out. Let's do this again. Like, it just never happens. But again, it's not it's not a bad thing for either side. If you're Dustin May, you take it as a little bit of protection in case the Cardinals also say, you know what, we would try it again. And if you're the Cardinals, you do it in case Dustin May pitches well and he says, hey, I loved St. Louis. Cool, well, we'll bring you back as well. So it doesn't necessarily matter either way. But that's why I would view this as it's just simply a one-year contract. And there's no such thing as a bad one-year contract, especially for a team in a rebuild. We see these all the time for these teams to where you're right. You hope you hit on the upside, you fix the sinker, whatever it is they're going to do and kind of tinker with them. And I think Dusty Blake is a guy that I know Cardinals fans don't necessarily view him this way. I think he's earned enough respect from me and from I think some other people to see some of the projects he's taken on and to look at him and go, hey, maybe he can get me to that next level. Because if you're Dustin May, that's a conversation you've got to be having. You know, you talk with Chaim Bloom, who's probably talked with Dusty, or at least brought Dusty probably on that call that they had with him and said, here's what we're thinking is how we can get you back to what you were in 2020 when you were good with the LA Dodgers. And if you're Dustin May, you listen to that, you go with that, and then you see if you can build on that once you get in season. It's why I love the signing for him, because Dusty fixed Jordan Hicks. I can't remember if he was part of the staff that had Montgomery or not. I don't think so.
I don't think he was there at that point.
But he was able to fix Jordan Hicks, which is his biggest win as a reclamation project. Also, Jojo Romero this past year. Let's not forget, Jojo got off to a slow start, and they were able to kind of help him kind of unlock his hips. He also did it at Top Golf, but they were able to fix him. They've worked with Matt Swanson. Look at what they did with Riley O'Brien this year. Like, there's plenty of examples to show you what the Cardinals have been able to do. Heck, look at what they did with Palante, not this year, last year, where they sent him down in the minors. He got some work down there. They gave him a pitching plan. It worked. He came up and was a savior for them in 2024 in the home stretch.
Yeah, he's done some really good work. And even if people think that he's a terrible pitching coach, now he has some interesting clay to mold. Let's find out what he does with it. This is the kind of reclamation project that the Cardinals were previously known for. And now they've got an opportunity in the modern day and age with modern ideas and modern philosophies to find out how they can adapt their pitching program to somebody that has really good stuff at full capacity. It might not be the only pitcher that they bring in, though. I thought it was really interesting. As we were listening to the Dustin May introductory press conference, Chaim Bloom kind of slipped something in there where he said, hey, listen, we're still open to other additions with our rotation. We're still out there looking for more pitching. And he didn't specify if that was via trade or free agency, maybe both. But I found it interesting. I kind of assumed, okay, now your rotation for 2026 is Matthew Liberatore, Dustin May, Michael McGreevy, and then two of Andre Palante, Kyle Leahy, and like Richard Fitz. I thought that would, of those six pitchers, you'd probably have five of them in your rotation next year. It sounds as though they're still interested in adding another veteran, and there was a report from Derek Gould after that press conference availability that they would like to add a veteran that brings stability to the rotation. So a legit veteran presence, like Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson type. That's fascinating to me, T-Bone. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't really know who the pitchers are that fit that criteria. Like, I guess Jose Quintana maybe would be somebody that would fit that criteria. I like the idea of a Lucas Giolito being added to the mix. Tyler Mahle is somebody that I really like. I don't know if you would look at him as somebody that adds stability, though, because of his recent injury history. I know we've talked in the past about Jordan Montgomery, who, again, very much does not add stability, but if you think he's going to be healthy for 2026, maybe that's somebody that you could consider for the upcoming season. I think it'd be great if they had another starter, because I would be cool with Libby, Dustin May, McGreevy, this other starter we're talking about, and then Palante, Leahy, and Fitz just get to battle it out for that fifth spot in the rotation, and the other two are either in AAA or in your bullpen. I think that'd be great going into 2026. What did you think when you heard it from Chaim Bloom for the first time?
Yeah, I think they're going to be adding somebody. Now, how they end up doing that, I'm not quite sure. Because you're right. This was, when he made that comment, it wasn't the typical, because he was directly asked about their rotation. And it wasn't the classic answer of, hey, yeah, we like where we're at. We're open to everything. It was like, hey, yeah, we're open to things and we are looking still to add to our rotation. So I think they're going to add somebody. My expectation, if you're looking for more of a veteran presence, would be coming from the free agent market. I don't think that is something you're acquiring in a trade, and I don't see them being as a quote-unquote buyer on the trade market. And that's the way that you'd almost have to approach it. So I think it's somebody you're looking at in the rotation that is a veteran. I don't think it's a Verlander. I don't think it's a Scherzer by any means. It is someone that's going to be older. Quintana could be one of those guys. Even he's not stability, though. Like, Quintana missed some time with Milwaukee this past year. So I think they're adding. I don't know exactly who to pinpoint for that. I like the idea of Tyler Mahle. I love the idea of a Jordan Montgomery reunion. I also think, to your point on like that battling for that fifth spot, I agree. Libby, McGreevy, lock him in. May, lock him in. And then insert name here. And then I actually think it becomes a Leahy versus Fitz battle. I wonder if they're turning Pallante into the Steven Matz role right off the bat. There was something I found interesting a couple of weeks ago. I think it was Derek Gould, if I remember correctly. It was just an offhand sentence, but it was, what are they looking for in their bullpen? Well, they're looking for another bullpen arm as a 1-year deal. But he also said they're looking for an arm that can cover multiple innings. That seems to be the theme that they're looking to build in their bullpen, is multi-inning relievers. And what I mean by that, I don't mean like a long man. I mean a guy that can go like an inning and a third, can do an up and down, like Swanson would do this year. Like we've seen JoJo Romero be able to do what they did a little bit with Riley O'Brien in the home
Kyle
stretch.
Leahy did that a lot.
Leahy did it a ton. I think they're looking for someone to take on that role. And maybe they just slide Pallante into that role. And instead of looking for a bullpen arm that fits that description, you add that, quote unquote, by putting Pallante into the pen. And then you go out and add a veteran starter. And then it fits. If he can't beat out Leahy, Fitz can go down to the minors and sit as the sixth starter and serve in kind of the McGreevy role and be kind of the veteran of that staff with Quinn Matthews, Bryson Motts, and those guys.
If you had to choose, let's say Montgomery's not what they're looking for, and they decide we want more stability. We want somebody that at least pitched in 2025. Out of Lucas Giolito, Tyler Mahle, and let's add in Jose Quintana into this mix. He started 24 games last year, 130 innings. I think that's probably good enough for what they're looking for. It's pretty similar, honestly, to Tyler Mahle. He had 15 starts last year for Texas and was very good, by the way, in those starts. Who would you want out of those three? Again, Lucas Giolito, Jose Quintana, Tyler Mahle. I think they're in three different levels of the market. Giolito is probably the top. He's projected for like 2 or 3 years at roughly $16 million per year. Tyler Mahle is more of like the 1 year, $15 to $20 million deal. And then I would assume Jose Quintana is more of a 1 year, $5 to $10 million type of a deal. But do you have a preference out of those three?
Yeah, I kind of like Lucas Giolito out of those three. I liked him when he hit the free agent market after leaving his weird 3-stop trip between the White Sox, Angels, and Cleveland, and then he blew out his arm in Boston. I've always liked his stuff. 3.41 ERA this past year. Strikeout number was down, which was kind of surprising. I wonder if that was just coming back from Tommy John. Now, maybe that's a real thing, and that is still going to be a problem for him. But I think there's more strikeout stuff in his arm than what he showed last year, to where I would look at him. And when he has been healthy, and he dealt with a little bit of an injury this year, but he still posted 26 times. You look back in his past, 33, 30, 31, 12 in the shortened season, 29, 32 starts. He's typically a guy that you can put in pen is going to start 25 plus games. Meanwhile, Mahle, though I like him, I mean, he mentioned even this year only made 15 starts. Quintana's a guy that deals with injuries in the past, to where some years he can get to that 25 plus mark, but we've seen it sometimes in the past he can't stay healthy either. Giolito would be the guy that I would pinpoint, and he's still fairly young, just 31 years of age. I would look at him of those three choices.
I like him a lot. I like him on a 2-year deal. If you can get him on a 2-year deal, that would be something that I'm definitely interested. 2 at like 32. I think I would do that with Lucas Giolito. If he's expecting a 3-year deal, though, and a lot of the time, we know how this works, you got to go that extra year in the free agency path, I think I would rather have Tyler Mahle on a 1-year flyer. Mahle has had really good stuff in his history. Again, he was super productive last year. Under the hood, maybe didn't quite match what the overall actual numbers were, but he controls contact pretty well. He's got fine swing and miss stuff. It's nothing that's going to jump off the page at you, though. If I had to choose between Tyler Mahle 1 year, let's call it $16 million, $17 million, something around there, basically the same AAV as Lucas Giolito, or Giolito at 3 years at the same AAV, I would just rather have Mahle. And then if you throw in Jose Quintana into this mix, I just don't think he really has any value as a trade asset anymore. He's available every offseason, and he's never a sought-after commodity. So if these teams don't value him, despite the fact that over the last 4 seasons, here's his ERA by year, T-Bone, 2.9, 3.5, 3.7, 3.9. He's been super productive. If nobody ever values him and he's not somebody that teams want to add, well, then as as the Cardinals, I don't see any value of adding that kind of an arm. Tyler Mahle, meanwhile, though, if you hit on him, and he's the kind of pitcher that he was for most of his opportunities last year with Texas, he's only 31 years old, and you might be able to get somebody to bite on him as a legit trade deadline acquisition. Or again, maybe you decide you want to keep him around for the next 3 to 5 years. That's also out there because of the age. Whereas with Jose Quintana, he's 37 years old. There's no upside left in his arm, and other teams don't really value him. I would not go that direction if I have a better alternative available.
Yeah, I agree on Quintana. I still think there should be a team that would value him if you got to the deadline, but his strikeout stuff started to come down a little bit last year. And as we've seen here in St. Louis, he's a 5 and dive, and Milwaukee last year was so desperate for arms, and he came back from injury, and they wouldn't even start him, right? They ended up using him as a opener / kind of gave them length in the bullpen in the home stretch. I don't know that I wouldn't mind doing Giolito on a 3-year deal if that's what if that's what it took to get it done, because I think as we've seen across this market when it comes to starting pitching, I think you could even move him with 2 years left on that contract next offseason. Maybe it's not a deadline move. Like maybe that would be something that would hamper you when you get to the trade deadline. He would be a sought-after commodity if he pitches well, though. Going into the offseason, a lot of uncertainty. People could get him at 2 years and say like $16 million a year. I think teams would look at that next offseason if you had him. And if you didn't want to move him, you could just keep him once Meg kind of graduates out, and then you still got a guy that's a veteran presence for when Quinn Matthews and maybe Doyle and Motts are here next year when you go into spring training.
It'd be interesting. If I'm him, I want a 3-year deal because I want to know where I'm going to be for 2026, sure, but also during the potential lockout in 2027 and where I will be when we come out of the lockout potentially in 2028. So that's what I would be trying to get if I'm Lucas Giolito. I think those are probably the kinds of names that you're going to be hearing, though, attached to the Cardinals if they decide to go out there in the free agent market. And I would be thrilled if any of them are added to the Cardinals rotation. If we leave this offseason and the Cardinals have added at the front portion of the rotation, Dustin May and let's call it Lucas Giolito, and then they've added depth with Richard Fitz. They also added a high upside arm via the Sonny Gray trade, potentially another high upside arm in the Brendan Donovan trade. And you still have Tink Hintz, Bryson Motts, Quinn Matthews, Eshawn Henderson, Liam Doyle, the possibility of the arms that are returning from injury with you've got Takoa Roby still coming back, Cooper Jerpy coming back from injury as well. I just mentioned like 7 arms down in the minor leagues. You added 3 or 4 other arms to your system. That'd be a hell of an offseason for Chaim Bloom in his first offseason in charge to revamp the pitching program to get this thing up and running again.
Yeah, I've been saying this for last couple, probably since the offseason began. I like where they're going in terms of their depth of pitching. Now, do they have a bunch of really good arms in that depth? That is yet to be seen, but at least they've got bodies that they can throw at the problem. I mean, you think of the last like 2 or 3 years, like especially this past year, they had someone go down to injury. I have no idea what they would have done. Ollie may have had to take the ball and start throwing innings for them.
They didn't know either.
Yeah. So like at least this year they feel like they've got pieces. Now, again, part of this does come down to development of a Quinn Matthews. Like if he struggles like he did this past year where he's still walking the world, it's not a lock that he's going to be here next year. In fact, then he might be falling on the category of, whoa, what happened to this prospect? What do we do with him? Same with Motts. We'll see how he develops as he gets into AAA next year, where he spent all of last year down at AA and the stuff played up. Will that continue when he gets to AAA? And at AAA, he's got to deal with the Major League Baseball. At AA, I think it's a different ball, if I'm not mistaken. So, but I like where they're going. I agree. I like that they're making all these additions, and some of these pieces are starting to creep up towards their closer, to where their depth is better. Now, the upside of those arms, I don't think is anything that's special, but at least it's there. At least you've got bodies if you start to deal with injuries.
Last thing on this before we get to the position player side of things and the latest with the Brendan Donovan sweepstakes. Your rotation last year with the Cardinals finished overall with a 4.7 ERA. That was good, if you want to call it that, for 25th in all of Major League Baseball. Your starters, Sonny Gray, 4.3 ERA. Andre Palante, 5.3 ERA. Miles Michaelis, 4.8 ERA. By the way, remarkably similar numbers to one Dustin May.
Oh, wait, really.
Matthew Liberator, 4.2 ERA, and Eric Fetty, 5.2 ERA. Michael McGreevy, just for good measure, 4.4 ERA, good for second among the Cardinals starters last year. Do you think the Cardinals will have a better rotation in 2026 than they did in 2025?
No. I think it's going to be very similar, if not potentially worse. And the reason I bring that up, I mean, I'm looking at this rotation. There's still not a ton of swing and miss in it. Like, May's stuff could be better, or it could be like it was last year, which is just fine. Libby stuff, I don't know what he's going to look like. McGreevy doesn't have any swing and miss. He's basically your Miles Michaelis, but when Miles Michaelis was good, where he's got better command, and it just depends on where the ball goes when contact is made. Leahy, will see how he translates as a starter. I like the arsenal. I don't know if the swing and miss is going to be there. Fitz is fine. Palante. I think it's going to be very similar. And the reason I think it could be worse than last year, and it's not so much based on ERA, it is going to put the bullpen in a much worse spot. I still have concerns about their innings for this year. Because who's the guy that you look at and you can write in pen is going like 180, 160, 150? Like, if Palante's not a starter, he's not getting there. McGreevy's probably the guy I would circle right now that would lead the Cardinals in innings this upcoming season. May, I have no idea. Libby, I have no idea. Leahy's going to be probably the same as Liberator, where when he gets to about midway through the year, they're probably going to have conversations about an innings restriction. And because they have more arms this year, I wouldn't doubt he moves back to the bullpen at some point this season. The only reason Liberator continues to start, they had nobody else to go to. So I think there's still going to be a major innings problem in this rotation, and that's why I would say it's going to be worse. I think the ERA probably could be similar. Maybe it's slightly better. I think it's not going to have as many innings in it as it did last year.
Is Ivan Herrera going to be the everyday catcher next year?
Oh, you think that factors into their... I still believe they're going to abandon that experiment at some point in the season, but sure, for now I'll say yes.
Yeah, they're going to be worse. I mean, listen.
Oh, way to put it on one guy.
No, it's a combination of a lot of really young arms with a really young catcher. That, generally speaking, doesn't lead to a whole hell of a lot of success. That being said, if I'm just looking at the pitchers, if I take that out of it here for a second, I think you could absolutely be better next year. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Could Richard Fitz be better for you than, I don't know, Eric Fetty? Yeah, in fact, I would expect him to be a little better than Eric Fetty was last year. Can Michael McGreevy just replace the numbers that he was last year? Yeah. Could you get to the end of the season and Dustin May gave you exactly or better than what Sonny Gray did a year ago? Yeah, he had a 4.3 ERA. I know the underlying stuff was way better than that, but eventually the results are what matter, and Sonny Gray didn't produce all that well a year ago. Andre Palante had a 5.3 ERA, man. A 5.3 ERA. Do I believe you could get something better than that from Lucas Giolito, Tyler Mahle, or, I don't know, Jose Quintana? Yeah, absolutely. So, and then there's Matthew Liberator, who last year, it was a great start to the season, don't get me wrong, but could he finish with another 4.5 ERA? Yeah, of course. So I do think if you just go 1-for-1 with your arms going into 2026, compared to the arms that you had in 2025, if you just did the blind test on could this guy reach the same results or better than the guy that was in his spot from a year ago, every single one of them, it's not hard to see. There's also more downside, though. The downside also exists for this upcoming year's rotation, and it could potentially be really bad. Dustin May just be what he was last year. And in that event, he's basically Miles Michaelis. You might end up taking a step back from Liberator, not a step forward, where the league has now seen him, and what you saw in the second half of the season, that's what he is as a starter. It's possible. I hope not, but it's possible. And in that event, well, he's worse than he was last year. Michael McGreevy, it could be a sophomore slump. We've seen this with how many different Cardinals in the past. They come in, year one's amazing, year two, the league has video on them, and it doesn't quite play as well. Teams are going to stack their lineups with left-handed hitters against him, and he's going to have to prove that he can get them out with consistency. Can he do that? I think so. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not. And if it doesn't, it could be closer to a 5 ERA than a 4.4 like we saw a year ago. Richard Fitz had a 5 ERA last year. Had 11 starts, had a 5 ERA with the Boston Red Sox. And then that veteran that you bring in, maybe it's Tyler Mahle. Maybe this time around with his 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, it doesn't go his way. He doesn't control the quality of the contacts quite as well as he did down in Texas. And now you have another dude that has a 4.5 ERA. So the upside exists. The downside is absolutely there. And this is the risk that you have when you go this route. I prefer it. I would rather go this route than what the Cardinals have done for 5 years now, where they rely on the same veterans to give them the same results every year. And you have a pretty good idea. The ceiling is capped. The floor is also a little higher than what it is next year. I'll aim for the upside, and I appreciate the fact that they're doing the same.
Yeah, I like they're going for upside. And like, this is where I think it is hard to accept as a Cardinals fan. Like, we bring up the upside's still not that high to me.
No, it's like
as
20.
Overall as a staff, I should say, because yeah, you're right. There's some guys like May, for example, like he could be really good if his upside ends up hitting like a number 3 starter like we're talking about. Overall as a staff though, like the upside is like 20th, I think, like you said, and I think the downside is like 28th. Like I think odds are they end up right about where they were last year, because it's not a high ceiling and it's a very low floor for what this rotation is going to be. That's why, like, yes, I see the scenario that you lay out where everything kind of goes well for him or some of these things click for him. Even then, like, I think a lot more of these guys are going to hit more of the floor than anything else.
The upside remains in your prospects.
Yeah, 100%.
If you want to get excited about the Cardinals pitching, it's not about Dustin May necessarily, or Michael McGreevy, or Matthew Liberatore, or even Richard Fitz, the new addition. It's about Tim Kins and Bryson Motts, but more specifically, Liam Doyle is the guy that you're getting excited about and what the potential could be there for him in 2026 and beyond. So maybe you will get to see him by the end of the year, but most of the season, it'll be the guys that we've been discussing for the last 25 to 30 minutes here on the Redbird Report. All right, coming up next, we just spent about 30 minutes talking about the pitching for the Cardinals, where it is, where it could be, and what the plan is with that rotation. How does that also apply to the Brendan Donovan sweepstakes? What are the latest there? We'll tell you next here on the Redbird Report. Okay, so the Brendan Donovan market is basically what it's been. It's sizzling. It's getting hot out there in the hot stove, but there's just no bites quite yet on what the Cardinals are looking for. The updates, and this comes from all of the insiders, I'll just go ahead and recap all of them for you. Every team in Major League Baseball is interested in Brendan Donovan. When is he going to be dealt? We don't know. There's a glut right now in the second base market. It's both the free agency market and the trade market that's affecting it. It's Brandon Lowe, it's Ketel Marte, Brendan Donovan. Now Bo Bichette is apparently playing second base for somebody potentially. Alex Bregman is out there for the middle infield market as well. And a bunch of the teams that are interested in Brendan Donovan are also interested in all of these other players. So it might take some time still for us to get any kind of a resolution here on the Brendan Donovan trade fronts. But everything that I've read, T-Bone, everything I've seen reported seems to suggest the interest is at an extremely high level. Teams like the Seattle Mariners, for example, have a ton of prospects to offer. And even if they say, hey, our top 3 guys are off limits, you could have somebody, maybe 2 somebodies in that 4 to 10 range, and those guys are borderline, if not just purely top 100 prospects in Major League Baseball. So my expectation remains Brendan Donovan will be traded by the Cardinals this offseason. He's going to get a huge return for them. And my guess is at least one of those guys will fit into the conversation that we were just having about their rotation and players that can be a part of that future answer with legitimate upside for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be moved this offseason, and I think you're going to see a top 100 prospect, at least one, coming back to the Cardinals in that move. There's just too many teams that want him. And if you're the Cardinals, he doesn't fit your timeline, so you have to make this move and move on from him to try and help kind of push this rebuild forward. What's fascinating is to see what piece has to move first for Donovan to be traded, because Ketel Marte, this is no shot at Brendan Donovan, is a better baseball player. Now, he's definitely got more warts to where he's a guy that might be a problem in the clubhouse. Donovan's not that guy. Brendan Donovan's like the perfect baseball player. 20% above league average, plays multiple positions, left-handed, and is a great dude in the clubhouse. Then it comes down to, okay, do teams want him over Ketel Marte? Are they wanting to make that move first? Or do teams have to wait and see where Ketel Marte goes first? Or Bo Bichette. Does Bo Bichette need to sign now that he's willing to play second base first? That's the part that's going to be fascinating to see how it kind of plays out. We talked about it with the dominoes of the Pete Alonso signing, how that had to happen first before we could even talk about Contreras probably being a trade candidate. I think you've got to see Ketel Marte get off the board first before we see Donovan's pivot. But I think Donovan is still as good as gone. I think the Cardinals are going to get what they're looking for and move him and try and accelerate this rebuild.
So we talked a little bit about this on air. I want to spend some time with you on it because we can expand here a little bit more than we can on the radio show side of things. What's the objective? Like, obviously, you want to get the best talent possible. That's always the goal. But there are different ways to do that. The Cardinals in the past have tried to maximize returns by getting guys that are close to the major leagues and they believe will be contributors at the major league level. You go back to the 2023 deadline. It was very clear what they were trying to do. Let's backfill our rotation. Let's get guys like a Thomas Saggese that can almost immediately contribute at the major league level. And we're very confident they'll be players for us. What is the ceiling to these guys? I don't know, but they're gonna be contributors in some capacity is what the belief was at the time. Now, that hasn't always come to fruition, but that was the idea behind a lot of those trades. And you could see that with the types of players that they were able to acquire. This past trade deadline, it wasn't necessarily that way. It felt as though they were taking bigger swings on, all right, there's some high upside here. The same thing was true in the draft last year, honestly, where we're taking some big cuts. And we might swing and miss at a few of these guys, but there's at least the potential of real tangible upside that exists within the players. So as it applies to the Brendan Donovan trade, you're probably going to have different offers on the table. And some of them may be, hey, this guy's at AAA. He's almost certainly going to impact your major league roster next year. Could be, I don't know, a 15% above league average hitter, or could be a guy that slots in as a number 3/4 starter for your rotation. Likelihood is it's never going to be anything more than that. And that's the headline of the package. Or you could go with a different package that, hey, this guy is in low A ball. He's 19 years old. Chances are he might never reach the big leagues. But, man, the stuff is there. He throws 100, has no clue where it's going. This wipeout slider, again, terrible command, but he's got legit potential to be a front end of the rotation starter 5 years from now if you're willing to be patient and you develop him the right way. Those could be two very different packages for the same player in Brendan Donovan. So, T-Bone, if you're in Chaim Bloom's shoes, what's the objective here? What are you trying to accomplish when you trade Brendan Donovan?
I think if you're Chaim Bloom, one, I would lead off by saying, I think you are swinging for upside plays. Like when you acquire these prospects, you should at least be looking at them and saying, okay, we think his ceiling is he could be a 25 home run guy, 20 or 30 doubles, or it's a pitcher and you say, we think that guy could be like a number 2. If it really breaks his way, maybe he becomes the number 1. But I think what you have to say with the floor is that guy becomes a big leaguer. And I know that it's hard to find some guys that kind of fit into that category of like prospects of past that have really slid into that.
Almost impossible. Those guys are typically top 10 prospects.
Yeah, I think you have to look at this though. And I think this isn't a scenario where you look back on this in, 5 years and you go, man, they got nothing for Brendan Donovan because it's like their best piece that they have right now that they can move. That's why I say like, I have to look back on this in 5 years and go, boy, wouldn't it have been great if prospect A developed into a number 2? But at least he's become like a really good number 3, number 4 starter for you because I think there's value in that. That's why I say you have to get major league guys that become big leaguers at a minimum in this deal. I think otherwise, if you're just swinging for high upside to where, boy, the ceiling is he's a stud for us, but the floor is he never touches the big leagues, that's how you just continue to cycle through and end up in the state of a continuous rebuild. And that's why I think you have to have guys that when I look at them, I can go, okay, I like the upside. I see what they're looking for. But like worst case scenario, he feels like he's going to be a big leaguer.
Did you feel like Thomas Saggese was an upside play?
No, I didn't think so at all. I looked at him and I said, okay, that's like a solid piece. Like if things break their way, they acquired a bench bat.
I'm trying to understand then, like who are these players that you're talking about? Because most of the time, if you're not a top 10 prospect, you kind of fit into 2 different buckets. you're either in the bucket where you're high upside, low floor, and we don't really know what you're going to be at the major league level. There's some big swing decision or swing holes. Like that's the Nolan Gorman, for example. Nolan Gorman, high upside prospect, low floor. Jordan Walker, high upside prospect, the potential to be a really low floor. And then on the other side, you have guys like Brendan Donovan when he was a prospect. Now, he wasn't particularly highly rated, but just a good baseball player. And I would say Thomas Ajaysi was kind of in this category of like top 100 prospect at the time-ish, and he hit everywhere he'd ever been. The upside was seemingly limited, but he could be a big leaguer. And so like the reason that I'm asking this question to you, T-Bone, is I just don't know that the players that you're talking about, the players that you're describing, I don't know how many of them are available in trade, especially for a guy like Brendan Donovan, who I do believe has huge upside or huge value on the market. But I think that kind of a player is more in like the Ketel Marte sweepstakes or the Mackenzie Gore sweepstakes, where you have multiple years of control over a higher upside player than a Brendan Donovan.
Yeah, like, would you call Alec Burleson this?
No.
An upside guy with floor was a player. What about like CJ Abrams?
Abrams was an upside play for sure, but he was a top 10 prospect in all of Major League Baseball.
But like, I guess maybe what I am saying when I look back on this trade for the Cardinals.
Maybe Mason Wynn might be an example of this. He was also a top 25 prospect in baseball, though.
Yeah, say he was high on that list too. I don't remember Abrams being that high, but I guess he had to be because he was a Padre that got traded. Yeah, he was very high.
He was like a legit, I think like top 5 in some.
9 at 2022 with the San Diego Padres. But I guess like maybe the reason that I keep saying it this way is because I think a lot of people keep continuing to have a conversation of this is the trade that accelerates the Cardinals rebuild. And I don't feel like that is the goal of this trade. Because I would think a goal of a trade of like this is a trade that accelerates a rebuild would be like trading a star, not a good utility player that a lot of teams want, but they're not giving up significantly high prospects for him. Yes, a top 100 prospect is a big get for the Cardinals, but like a fringe top 100 prospects, like acquiring a guy that was selected in the late first rounds of in the NHL. These guys are like the typical, like you hope they become just big leaguers. And the reason I say like my hope would be like if you acquire 3 prospects, for example, let's say you acquire 2 that end up becoming good big leaguers. Maybe one's a like number 3 starter or number 4 starter, and one is a like league average bat that you acquire that will say he's a corner outfielder. The reason I say like my hope would be you acquire guys that are big leaguers because then you can package them later on and move on from them potentially, right? You can flip them to get something better as the years go along. But if you miss on a prospect, like you literally get nothing out of it. You swung for the fences, and that is a good thing. They should be trying to take some swings. But then I just traded away what is the best asset for the Cardinals right now in Brendan Donovan and got nothing that helped you for the now or in the future.
But then to me, being fearful of that is what led the Cardinals to where we are today. Like the fear of striking out prevents you from hitting the home run. It doesn't allow you to take those big swings. Like there are players within the Mariners organization, their minor league prospect system, like Lazaro Montes. He is huge. He is big. He reminds me of Jordan Walker. And last year, when he got to AA, he was exposed. Now, I don't know if that was just like, hey, he played 65 games at a level that he wasn't comfortable with and hadn't adjusted to, and it's going to get better next year. Or if it was, hey, now that the pitchers are better and they know what they're doing and how to attack him, this is who he is. And he's going to be a 700 OPS guy instead of the previous 1,000 OPS that he had at every other level. I don't know. But the upside with him is enormous. He has 65 grade power. That's really impressive. I don't know what it's going to be at the big league level. I don't know where he's going to play at the big league level. But he's a legit top 100 prospect. He's the number 3 prospect in an absolutely loaded Mariner system, according to MLB Pipeline. I would take that swing and find out what you've got. And the reason why I'm not as concerned about the potential of swinging and missing is because, man, that's the cost of doing business. If you end up where you got nothing in return for Brendan Donovan, you tried. Like what you got was the 20% chance of receiving a star, right? Like when I go to the gas station and I buy a scratch-off ticket, if I don't win, it doesn't mean I got nothing in return for my 5, 10, whatever, how many dollars. No, I got the opportunity to scratch that off and win 1,000 or whatever it was. That's what I paid for. I didn't pay for the right to get that guaranteed $1,000. If I wanted to do that, man, I'd start an IRA. Like it's a much better long-term investment, but I'm trying to get rich quick. And to me, that's what the Cardinals are doing here. They're trying to maximize their biggest trade asset in the market. And the way to do so is by taking these big swings. When they had a top 5 selection, go take a big swing on a pitcher. Could he break in the minor leagues and you get nothing for it? Yeah, but you took the swing and maybe it works out. This upcoming year, they have the number 13 overall selection. They'll also have like the 35th-ish selection for their comp pick, and then another top 50 selection. Dude, take some swings with those picks. With this trade, take swings. With the next draft pick in 2027, when they'll probably be selecting, let's be real, in the top 5 or so, take another huge swing. And now you've got 3 years of trades plus draft picks plus hopefully international signings. They've taken some big swings down there as well, where if you've got 30 different players that you've taken swings on over that stretch of time and you hit on 3 of them, that's a terrible hit rate. But that means you got 3 potential stars out of it, man. They've been lacking that for a decade. And so the asset accumulation mode that they're in right now, to me, and I find this to be a really interesting conversation because I think both of these philosophies are not necessarily wrong. It's just different philosophies. The Brendan Donovan trade will be representative of a bigger philosophy that I believe is changing within the Cardinals organization. And I think it will lead to guys like Lazaro Montes that are potentially the acquisition that come in return for Brendan Donovan. I'm using him as the placeholder here, but players like him that have big time upside, but huge potential downside as well.
Yeah, and I think it also depends, like when you have this conversation, and I think this is more of a thing that Chaim would have a better sense of than that we can on the outside, is how much can you operate like the Cardinals of old? And the reason I bring that up is because the way I think about it, because I would argue that where it didn't go wrong for the Cardinals wasn't their lack of swings, it was their lack of parting with their good talent. Because like think about like when they were supposedly in the Soto sweepstakes, you can take all these like solid pieces that you have and you can package them together to go get a star or a much needed starter that could be on the potential market as years go along. But if you're not willing to do that, right? If you're more of a, hey, we need to actually be what they keep selling us on is a draft and development organization. And hey, we won't go out and trade for a star and then be able to even sign him to the contract extension like they did of old with the Edmonds and the Rolands and the Matt Hollidays and the continue the list, Paul Goldschmidts or the Arenado who was on that contract. Then yeah, you probably do have to go more of the model you're talking about, because that's what the really smaller market teams are doing. That's what like the Guardians, the Tampa Bay Rays have to do to acquire their stars. But because maybe I'm still stuck in the older mindset, I still view it as if you end up with just big leaguers, you can package those big leaguers to go out there and acquire the stars on the external market rather than saying, hey, we have to take this massive swing. And if we miss, we miss, but we then go right back to it and try and do it. I don't necessarily view it that way. I do agree they do need to take more swings because that is a part of the problem. I don't think it's the biggest problem, but it is part of the problem. So that's where maybe my mindset is stuck in like, hey, if I look back on this in 5 years and I'm looking at like a 7-hole hitter that's your corner left fielder and a number 4 starter, I'm going to go success. Now let's see if you can flip those, go get the star if you need to go still acquire them.
All right, so you mentioned the last time that they made a big move like that in Nolan Arenado. Now he is potentially going to be on the way out once again. The latest update, I think this came from Jeff Passan, if I remember correctly. I can't remember. Ken Rosenthal, who reported that, hey, the Angels could be a potential suitor. It wasn't like a hard report, just a speculation more so, but he throws it out there for a reason. Maybe the Angels could be a suitor for Nolan Arenado. It does not appear that there's this huge market that has developed at this point in the offseason for Arenado. Do you think there will be a market for Nolan Arenado?
He is so hard for me to predict because I agree on the stance of Arenado should not be here, but it takes 2 to tangle for that stance to become true. And I don't see the team for him. I just don't, looking across the marketplace. Because if I am a team like the Red Sox, and we're not going to re-sign Bregman. Well, it sounds like they've got interest in Ketel Marte and that they would give playing time to a younger kid at third base. Or they've connected Bo Bichette to potentially play the hot corner rather than going out and acquiring Arenado. If I'm the Tigers, I don't need Arenado necessarily. We're looking more for offensive upgrades than we are looking for a good defensive third baseman. And then like the Angels, like, okay, maybe the Angels would make this call. Is Arenado willing to go to the Angels? Because even though he says, I am more open to going to teams, are you more open to going to teams that suck? Because the Angels stink. And I don't care what they do. They're not going to be a playoff team. And every time I hear Arenado talk, it is typically more open, but I want to go and compete still, right? I want to go be on a team that's winning. Well, who's the winning team that's going to pinpoint him as a guy that they need to bring in? Even though the Cardinals are willing to eat a lot of money on him. Like, yes, he should be traded this offseason. I don't see a lot of teams interested in him. And if they are, they might be the Angels. I think the A's might be a team that could be connecting the dots towards him eventually at some point this offseason if the Cardinals eat enough money on it. But again, it's just he want to go play in a minor league ballpark to close things out on his career. Talk about a sad end to a Hall of Fame career. It's why I still think there is a better chance than a lot of people are letting on that Nolan Arenado is the starting third baseman on opening day of 2026.
I believe that nuance and context are things that are lacking in a lot of sports conversation in 2025. This is one of those conversations that I will eliminate nuance and context. He can't be a part of the Cardinals in 2026. It just can't happen. He needs to be elsewhere. He, I believe, will be elsewhere. What is that market? Where does he land? I don't know. I think that it will develop at some point between now and February, and I believe that Chaim Bloom will pay whatever is necessary in order for that market to develop. If that means somebody else takes on $5 million, Nolan Arenado at $5 million for next year, so be it. And that means you basically paid him to go away, and I'm cool with that because you need those opportunities. You can't come back with Nolan Arenado as a part of the roster in 2026. That's my firm stance on the matter. I understand nuance and context are important. Everything you just said, I get, and you're not inherently wrong with it. I just personally believe that they should be in the business of doing whatever it takes to get him somewhere else. All right, last thing that I wanted to get to before we get out of here today. We'll be back in a few weeks to recap whatever happens between basically now and the start of the new year here on the Redbird Report. There are a few deadlines that will take place between now and potentially that next podcast that we're doing. There are two infielders that are coming over from Japan, or at least are expected to come over from Japan. Both of them have been posted at this point in time. Seems like both are corner guys, third base, first base types with big time power. Murakami is one. The other is Kazuma, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Murakami is the younger player with big time power potential. I don't know what his market is. It seems like nobody really knows what his market is. All I do know is that we've got 4 days from the time that we're recording before he officially has to sign with somebody if he's coming over to the States, and that's the expectation. The other one, Okamoto is the other one. He has to sign by January 4th, so there's a little bit more time with him to sign with the big league club. Okamoto, I think, is like 30. Is when he'll come over. It seems like he could get a pretty short-term deal. Murakami, I thought was going to get like a 5-year deal. Now it seems as though some are suggesting maybe he also has to settle for a shorter-term deal. Do you think either of these two makes sense for the Cardinals? We can just have a quick conversation about this and the potential of them going to the Japanese market to sign one.
Yeah, I don't have much interest in the right-handed bat that you kind of talk about there. The older one, contact, like, I don't know that you need to sign him to a contract when he potentially comes over.
Okamoto. He's the one that is signing in January.
Yeah, I don't have much interest in him. I don't think I want to give him I don't even know what he ends up settling for, but say it's even a 3-year deal. That doesn't match up with your timeline. And you got Contreras that you got to move first before you can make this kind of a move happen because that would be his position. And honestly, I've got the replacement there in Alec Burleson. The left-handed one is a little bit more interesting.
Murakami, first/third baseman, left-handed hitter, 220, 25 years old.
He's interesting if his market is going to hold him to a 1 or 2 year deal. And I know what I just said about the right-handed guy. I just don't know if there's much upside with him. This guy has unbelievable power. Now, he misses a ton. Like, this could be just the next Nolan Gorman that you sign. But I would take the swing on him because if it does click, there was a great piece in The Athletic today talking about him as like maybe the next Kyle Schwarber. I will take that. I could go for a new Kyle Schwarber here in St. Louis. And that's the kind of guy that you sign him, and maybe he doesn't end up fitting into your plans. Maybe you do a 2-year deal and he hits really well, and you get all these calls at the trade deadline, and you go, you know what, we love him. Boy, we were getting unbelievable calls to potentially trade him, and you make that happen. Or if he does end up hitting, he's only 25, you said. Like, that's a guy that you can keep long-term and then eventually sign to another big contract and make him the middle-of-the-order bat you've been looking for.
Murakami, sign me up. If it's a 2-year deal, 3-year deal maybe at a reasonable price, sign me up. I'm all in. That sounds fantastic to me. The upside is there, and figure it out. It also, if you do end up signing him, it allows you to trade Alec Burleson. That's not something I'm looking to do necessarily, but if I sign a guy that has this huge upside and he's going to play first base for me from the left side next year, and I'm able to recoup some of the value by trading away Alec Burleson for even more assets in my minor league system, I don't think he gets you exactly what Brendan Donovan does, but maybe instead of 2 top 100 prospects, you get 1 in return for Alec Burleson. Well, that seems like a pretty good decision by the Cardinals, in my opinion. And you're doing this for, again, a 25-year-old, 26-year-old player. Cool, sign me up. Again, this is a big swing. It might not work out. He may be terrible. He might be exactly what you thought Nolan Gorman could be, though. And that is something this team has desperately been lacking. So I'm in. On the other one, the 29-year-old Okamoto, I'm interested. I do think it's maybe a little more interesting than you do. Again, I think it would potentially allow you to trade an Alec Burleson. It's a placeholder. You trade Alec Burleson, trade Wilson Contreras, see what this looks like for you at first base. If it works, great. If not, you tried and you move on. The upside, I think, maybe is a little better than what some people are suggesting. This is a guy that hit 41 home runs 2 years ago. Before that, it was 30, 39, 31, 31, 33 in the home run totals. He's got some pop. It's not the same grade as Murakami, but he's got a little bit of pop in this bat. So this is the market that the Cardinals have either failed or struggled to explore in the past. If it's not opening up the way that they expected with the Padres, the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, the Cubs, etc., I would be very interested in seeing the Cardinals explore this for the first time in a really long time.
Yeah, and I like what you brought up with Burleson, because I didn't bring it up here. I brought it up on the show. If there are teams that are looking to move prospects, this is the thing we haven't talked about yet on the Redbird Report. Apparently, there's a lot of teams that have a bunch of prospects that they want to deal, but nobody wants to take on prospects because basically 26 of the 30 teams are looking to get better. 2 are kind of stuck in purgatory, like the White Sox and Rockies. And then there's the Cardinals and Nationals that are in teardown mode with, guess what, new presidents of baseball operations. So if people want to move prospects, and if you're willing to go out and sign one of these guys that we're talking about, whether it's the right-handed or left-handed one, I don't care either way. You're willing to take those guys to fill things in. I could see where you're the Cardinals, you explore Burleson more. They kind of wrote it off early in the offseason based on a reporting that was going to, hey, Alec Burleson, probably part of the core moving forward. I wouldn't be so sold on that. I think there's a path where they could at least entertain offers on him and sell him at his peak. Because, again, I'm not sure he fits into their timeline moving forward. And you could sell high on him rather than selling low on a Newbar or a Gorman, and you could go out and find a replacement on the market like we just talked about.
We're still in the early stages of the offseason. We're into mid-December, and there's still a lot of dominoes to fall. We will certainly be paying attention to each and every one of them as they happen. For all of you out there that have tuned in this year, it's our first year doing the Redbird Report together. We got a brand new studio in here that we're able to do things in.
Just for us, maybe.
It's been fantastic. And we appreciate each and every one of you that has made it possible. So have yourself a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year as well. We will talk to you guys whenever we are able to get back. So I think a few weeks from now is when we're planning to be back. If there's huge news that breaks between now and then, maybe we'll do some kind of an emergency pod together. But for Tanner Hendrickson and Zane on the video side of things, as always, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys next time here on the Redbird Report.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.